Playtime Co. wasn't built for fun. It was built for secrets, for experiments, for horrors no child should ever see. Behind the smiling toys and bright colors lies a factory drenched in blood, filled with cries that echo through empty hallways, and a darkness that grows stronger with every passing year. This is the story of murdered children, of people never seen again, some of them who never truly left. It is the story of innocence stolen, of lives shattered, of monsters born from human hands. This is the story of Poppy, the girl who remembers too much, who fears too little, and who holds the key to everything. The story of Dr. Harley Sawyer, a man who took too much and gave too little. This is the full story of Poppy Playtime, a story of betrayal, obsession, and the horrors lurking beneath the factory floor. A story of every child who went missing, of every monster that was created, and of how Playtime Co. silenced them all. Playtime Co. was founded in 1930 by a man named Elliot Ludwig. His dream sounded noble, simple, almost beautiful. Bring joy to children, build toys in America, create smiles that would last forever. And at first, he did. The company exploded in popularity, becoming one of the largest toy manufacturers in the world. Factories roared day and night, buildings rose into the sky, assembly lines never slept. But success has a way of hollowing a man out. Elliot poured everything into Playtime Co. Every waking hour, every ounce of his sanity. He chased innovation like a starving man chases food. And in doing so, he let everything else rot. That same year the company began its rise, his wife, Molly, walked out. Divorce papers signed, marriage dissolved. She couldn't compete with machines and blueprints, and a husband who was never home. But Elliot didn't mourn. He doubled down.
A smile is hope. A smile is love. A smile is understanding. And there is nothing more gratifying to my soul than being the reason for a child's smile.
And he meant it. He partnered with an ambitious construction firm, Warrenbach Construction, led by Darwin Silver. Together, they built something far beyond a factory. They built a monument, a sprawling industrial labyrinth of steel corridors, echoing halls, and underground sectors that seemed to stretch endlessly beneath the earth. A place where sunlight really touched the walls. A place that hummed even when no one was speaking. By 1950, Elliot believed he had achieved perfection. That year, he unveiled his masterpiece, Poppy, a doll unlike anything the world had ever seen. She didn't just speak pre-recorded phrases. She talked and responded. She carried conversations in a way that felt personal, intimate. Her voice was soft and warm, like a mother whispering at bedtime. Her hair carried the scent of poppies, a fragrance known to calm children, to lull them gently into sleep. Parents were enchanted. Children adored her. Sales skyrocketed. Elliot Ludwig became a household name, a visionary, a genius, a man who had reshaped childhood itself. For 34 years, Poppy held the title of Playtime's biggest success. But Poppy wasn't just revolutionary, she was unnatural. Beneath the painted smile and porcelain skin, there was something else. Organic components, living tissue, material that twitched and responded beneath layers of plastic and synthetic hair, warm to the touch if you held her long enough, almost like she had a pulse. Playtime Co. buried that truth beneath contracts and corporate policy. No refunds, no repairs. If something went wrong with your Poppy doll, you didn't send her back, you kept her. For years, no one questioned it. And then tragedy struck Elliot Ludwig in a way no business success could shield him from. At some point during the company's rise, Elliot adopted a daughter. She became the one thing in his life untouched by factory smoke and production schedules, the one light he allowed himself to love. And then she died. Whatever brilliance Elliot had once possessed curdled into desperation. Grief hollowed him out the way ambition once had. And then Elliot did the unthinkable. Using the same research that made Poppy special, Elliot attempted to transfer his daughter's consciousness into one of the dolls. A last experiment, a forbidden gamble against death itself. And somehow, it worked. The Poppy doll opened her eyes. She spoke in his daughter's voice. She remembered things no machine should remember. She was afraid of the dark, afraid of being alone. But Elliot didn't celebrate, he panicked, because if she could die once, she could die again. So he built her a hidden sanctuary deep within the factory walls, a secret chamber far from prying eyes and curious employees. There, inside a pristine glass case, he kept her protected, preserved, watched, Not like a toy or his daughter, but like a specimen, like a relic he refused to bury, and that was the moment everything changed. Because if one child could live inside a toy, if death could be rewritten with enough genius and enough nerve, then why stop at one? Grief gave way to ambition, and ambition has never needed morality. Business was booming. Playtime Co. expanded rapidly, swallowing up land, building new wings, digging deeper beneath the earth. Hundreds of employees were hired to keep up with production demands. One of them was a man named Thomas Clark. On paper, he was a pediatrician. He worked in Playcare, a cheerful daycare and orphanage operated by the company itself. Bright walls, painted murals, smiling mascots watching from every corner. A place advertised as a safe haven for children without homes. On the outside, it looked charitable, benevolent, but on the inside, the walls were thicker than they needed to be. Certain hallways required clearance most staff didn't have, and children who entered certain rooms were rarely seen by the rest of the facility ever again. Dr. Clark's job was to monitor their health, to evaluate their compatibility. No one ever asked what that meant. In the late 50s, Playtime Co. unveiled its second major hit, Doughy Dough Man, a towering, elastic mass of vibrant, smiling putty that the children could stretch, mold, and reshape into anything they imagined. He bounced, he laughed, he could flatten himself against walls and spring back into shape. Kids across America begged for him. Parents saw harmless fun. No one asked why a toy made of revolutionary elastic compounds required such extensive internal testing. No one questioned the faint warmth some claimed they felt beneath the surface. By the 1960s, Playtime Co. was unstoppable. Elliot Ludwig shifted his focus towards total domination of the industry. He hired Jimmy Roth as chief marketing officer, a master of turning innocence into profit, and Laith Pierre as head of innovation. Pierre, in particular, understood Elliot's vision, and he was unburdened by sentiment. In 1960, they unveiled the Make-A-Friend machine, an automated production system capable of manufacturing toys without direct human assembly. Metal arms moved with eerie precision. Conveyor belts carried unfinished forms into sealed chambers and returned them completed, alive-looking, efficient, unnervingly so. The machine became the beating heart of the factory, and it never seemed to shut off. Throughout the decade, Playtime Co. chased another miracle to rival Poppy. They released Brawn the Dinosaur, massive, imposing, with a jaw that could snap shut with unsettling force. Later came Boxy Boo, compact, coiled, hidden inside a cheerful Jack-in-the-Box exterior, but neither matched Poppy's sales. Investors called them disappointments, and by the end of the 1960s, the line between product and subject had begun to disappear. During the 1970s, Playtime Co. expanded more aggressively than ever, even as its newer mascots like Yarnaby failed to recreate the cultural phenomenon of Poppy. In 1976, Elliot Ludwig unveiled Playcare, an orphanage constructed directly beneath the factory. Publicly, it was marketed as a charitable initiative meant to house and educate vulnerable children, and for a while, it was. Around the same time, Ludwig launched the Young Geniuses program, recruiting exceptionally intelligent children to accelerate scientific breakthroughs within the company. Among them was Harley Sawyer, a prodigy whose brilliance was matched only by his emotional detachment. Sawyer saw morality as an obstacle and human life as a resource, a mindset Ludwig initially admired, but eventually feared. When Ludwig removed him from the program, hoping to curb his growing ruthlessness, Sawyer interpreted it as betrayal, a wound that would fester for years. By the end of the decade, Playtime Co. released Candy Cat in 1979, an attempt to reignite the public excitement. But while sales fluctuated, the company's true ambitions were no longer focused on store shelves. Beneath the factory floor, in reinforced halls, Playtime Co. was no longer building toys. It was building something that would not break, would not age, and would not die. New toy concepts flooded the design floor, some profitable, but many humiliating disasters quietly buried before the public could laugh too loudly. One of the worst was Kick Me Paul, a bizarre, poorly engineered mascot that marketing desperately tried to rebrand after its initial rejection. Twice it was pushed back into development. Twice it failed. Eventually, it was discarded and sent to a sealed storage sector employees would later refer to in hushed tones as the rejection room, a graveyard of ideas too unstable, too disturbing, or too costly to fix. But in 1984, the company struck gold again. Huggy Wuggy. Tall, furry, bright blue, designed with impossibly long arms that wrapped around children in what was marketed as the perfect hug. His wide smile and cartoonish eyes made him feel safe, comforting, even protective. Sales exploded almost overnight. Huggy became the new face of the company, standing beside Poppy as one of Playtime's Co.'s defining mascots. A year later came Kissy Missy, his pink, softer-spoken counterpart, created to broaden the brand's appeal and double the merchandise. Together, they dominated store shelves and television ads. By the 1990s, Playtime attempted to diversify with the Swappables line of hybrid animal toys like Catbee and PJ Pug-A-Pillar, colorful and modular, designed to be mixed and matched. They sold reasonably well, but they lacked something. They didn't feel alive in the way Huggy did. They didn't inspire obsession. In 1989, Playtime launched what would become one of its most ambitious projects, the Smiling Critters. Characters like Dog Day, Bobby Bear Hug, Crafty Corn, and Catnap were rolled out with full marketing support, complete with their own cartoon series. The line was heavily integrated into Playcare, decorating walls, classrooms, and testing chambers alike. Children were encouraged to bond with them, to trust them, but one of those mascots carried a flaw. Catnap. Marketed as a soothing bedtime companion, the toy was designed to release a calming, lavender-scented extract to help children sleep. Instead, due to a manufacturing defect or something far less accidental, certain units began emitting a thick, red vapor.
Catnap! Please, help us go to sleep, Catnap!
We need it, Catnap!
Please help us!
Sleep! Sleep! Sleep!
The smoke didn't soothe, it suffocated rooms in a metallic haze. Children exposed to it reported relentless, violent nightmares, hallucinations, sleep paralysis. Some woke up screaming about shapes moving in the dark. Others refused to sleep at all. The media backlash was swift and brutal. Playtime Co. issued a recall and pulled Catnap from shelves, scrubbing the character from advertisements and pretending the incident had never happened. Officially, it was labeled a production error, but inside the factory, there was no confusion. The red smoke hadn't appeared by accident.
Only one thing appears glaringly certain. Your children are not safe with Catnap.
All right, Miss Harper. Please explain the situation. Spare no detail. Well, like any night, all the children were getting to sleep. It was peaceful, quiet. Catnap had the red smoke in the room. Then suddenly, there was this scream. Nightmares happen, I know, but this, dilated pupils and quivering lips. The way her eyes darted around the room, and I swear, her hand in mine, it felt like her blood was boiling beneath her skin. She saw something too, something horrible. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. Miss Harper, we'll provide the very best care we can offer. You have my word. But this is important. Did Marie happen to describe what she saw? Yes, a monster, she said that it was colorless. Gosh, I could feel the poor little heart pounding. For her, it was right there. And her movements, they were so wild. Arms flailing, legs kicking. There are many concerns we must address at this time. But vitals show normal, and we'll continue to monitor. She'll be okay. No! Well, pardon me if I'm not comforted by that. Just bring my little girl back to me.
In 1990, the illusion surrounding Playtime Co. finally shattered. Elliot Ludwig was found dead inside his estate, his body discovered beneath the towering ceilings of the empire he had built. But he wasn't alone. Lying near him was the body of an unidentified child. The details were never fully released to the public, but inside the company, suspicion hardened around one name: Dr. Harley Sawyer. The former young genius's prodigy had grown into a brilliant neuroscientist and a man no longer guided by hesitation or morality. That same year, as if Ludwig's death was merely a scheduling inconvenience, Playtime Co. renewed its contract with Warrenbach Construction. The new agreement removed limitations entirely. The company would pay for whatever was built: new wings, underground sectors, reinforced containment chambers, and in return, Warrenbach would ask no questions. A vague agreement that led to the creation of deeper underground wings that felt far removed from simple toy production.
My company. We've built a lot for you over the years, and believe me, we've always been accommodating. We just did the work you paid us to do.
And your point here is?
I don't like what I'm supposed to be building here. Look, the game station, whatever. It'll be fun for the kids. underground production plants. Sure, maximize production. Makes a kind of sense. As much of any of this, I suppose. But this... What in the world would a toy company need with a prison? I need to hear that this is still the same company. If we're gonna make this thing for you, then I need that assurance.
Let me give you a bit of history, friend. In 1972, you signed a contract, a legally binding piece of paper that says whatever is asked of you, you do it. We asked. You did. In 1990, you signed another, a renewal. In it, had you bothered at all to read it, you'd have found a small clause. Any and all directives will be accomplished in the appropriate time and with appropriate compensation should the project be completed to satisfaction. So now you do the work because we've given you a directive.
Mr. Ritterman, we're near the...
Yes. Yes, we are. All of us are. On a ledge. Great things are coming. Great things that will someday make a lot of people very happy. I'm a businessman, Mr. Silver, and I don't like get angry. I get paid to see that things get done. And this, like everything else, will get done.
The factory expanded downward and outward, its foundation sinking deeper into secrecy. When Sawyer officially joined Playtime Co., recruited by Head of Innovation Leith Pierre, he gained access to Ludwig's private research. What he found fascinated him. Ludwig had been conducting hidden experiments attempting to revive dead rats using a substance derived from poppy flower gel. He subjected the animals to extreme conditions, suffocation, freezing, blunt trauma, then attempted reanimation. The results were inconsistent at best, catastrophic at worst. To Ludwig, the failures had been frustrating obstacles. To Sawyer, they were proof that the theory wasn't wrong, only limited. Ludwig, in his grief and obsession, had been thinking too small. At the same time, the company's rapid growth was creating financial strain. Human workers required wages, oversight, and legal accountability. Accidents carried consequences. Lawsuits loomed like ticking bombs. Sawyer offered a solution that was as efficient as it was horrifying. Replace the workforce entirely. Create living toy workers, stronger than humans, cheaper to maintain, incapable of whistleblowing or resisting orders. Creatures that could endure pain, obey commands, and never speak to the outside world. The proposal became known as the Bigger Bodies Initiative. To sustain it, Playtime Co. turned to the most vulnerable population it controlled, the children of the Playcare. The children stopped being adopted. They stopped being protected. After Ludwig's death, they became cataloged, monitored, and tested. Performance evaluations at the game station determined their physical resilience, intelligence, and psychological thresholds, and those who met the company's criteria were funneled into the Bigger Bodies Initiative, a program dedicated to transforming children into living mascots through invasive and irreversible experimentation. It provided a steady supply of test subjects, with no one searching for them. Playtime hired a biologist to help run the Bigger Bodies Initiative known as Preston Willard. He worked in Playtime Co.'s science department, who gradually became one of the company's most conflicted and morally troubled employees. Preston, alongside Jessica Newman, carried out many of Playtime Co.'s so-called conditioning procedures, a euphemism for the company's attempts at brainwashing its living experiments. Toys that failed to follow instructions or displayed unstable behavior, including experiments like Catnap or Mommy Longlegs, were sent back for further operations. Psychological manipulation and forced conditioning meant to suppress aggression and enforce obedience.
Does it ever bother you the way they act after we...
No, not really. The work's important.
Despite the company's confidence in these methods, the results were largely failures. The conditioning had extremely low success rates, with most experiments continuing to behave violently or unpredictably, revealing that Playtime Co. never truly understood or controlled the living creatures they were trying to shape. Preston was outwardly sadistic, inquisitive, and often bitter towards the other executives. His private notes revealed deep guilt over the experiments and sympathy for both his co-workers and the children being used as test subjects. Guilt he even hid from his own wife. He questioned the ethics of the Bigger Bodies Initiative, filing reports after incidents like Catnap's 1990 massacre and pushing for stricter safety measures, but his warnings were ignored. He reached out to Stella Graber, who is a fellow employee, about the ethics of it, asking if she truly believes this is the right thing.
I did some soul searching and got to thinking about the bigger picture. I took this job because I wanted to help change kids' lives for the better. Of course, these procedures are far from ideal. I cried like a baby when I read them. But I started looking past the here and now. Started looking down the road a bit. And that's when it clicked. What your researchers can do down here will someday help a lot of people out there, including so many kids. That's a bigger and better change than I could ever have hoped to make. That's a change I want to help make.
Over time, Preston began secretly documenting the truth behind Playtime's experiments, intending to expose the company, and eventually conspired with other staff in an attempt to stop the growing horrors, unknowingly helping set the stage for the prototype's rebellion and the Hour of Joy. Meanwhile, his partner, Jessica Newman, was a woman shaped entirely by Playtime Co., an analytic mind warped in a calm, almost clinical composure that hid how deeply the company had conditioned her from childhood, raised as an orphan in play care, and later educated into becoming a scientist within the same walls. She grew up believing that sacrifice was simply part of progress, and that pain was acceptable as long as it served innovation. She spoke about surgeries and experiments with detached professionalism, calmly documenting procedures that turned living children and coworkers into toys, while insisting they were doing good work. Even when assisting in the grotesque conversion of Thomas Clark into Experiment 1199, aka Catnap, she kept her voice steady, recording each detail as if it was routine. Alongside Preston, she helped oversee the company's failed attempts at brainwashing unstable experiments like Catnap, Mommy Longlegs, Prototype, etc., believing logic and procedure could control creatures born from trauma and suffering. Yet beneath her cool exterior, cracks occasionally showed. She flinched when Catnap suddenly lunged at the observation glass, her fear momentarily breaking through the mask she had worn for years, revealing that even she understood on some level that these were not toys, but living things capable of hatred.
Yes, your name, please.
Is Catnap.
What is your name? What is your experiment number? Can you tell me who you are?
Experiment 1006, the Prototype. Playtime Co.'s most advanced, intelligent, and dangerous creation. He was built from a fusion of organic and mechanical parts and labeled the prime example of what the company hoped to achieve. Unlike other experiments, he required no food or sustenance, making him a unique outlier. From the beginning, scientists recognized his extraordinary intelligence, adaptability, and unpredictability. Dr. Harley Sawyer became obsessed with Experiment 1006, believing he held the key to unlocking the ultimate secret of the Bigger Bodies program. While many staff feared the prototype and suggested destroying him, Sawyer refused, convinced his mind was too valuable to lose. The prototype quickly proved just how advanced he truly was. He demonstrated creativity, self-awareness, and strategic thinking far beyond any other experiment. In one recorded escape attempt, he disassembled a digital alarm clock and constructed a laser pointer from its parts, using it to disable the security camera in his cell for nearly 30 seconds. He then hid in a blind spot to fake his disappearance and nearly escaped confinement. When an employee entered his cell to investigate, the prototype brutally killed them. This incident showed both his intelligence and his capacity for calculated violence. Over time, he attempted 3 separate escapes, 2 of which were almost successful. He became the first experiment to actively manipulate and use Playtime Co. technology, even remotely altering VHS tapes to communicate secret instructions, likely a method he later used to organize the other experiments without staff realizing. One of Prototype's earliest and most important relationships was with an orphan named Theodore Graham Bell. He secretly befriended the boy while hiding in play care and encouraging him to sabotage the company. During an attempted escape, Theodore electrocuted himself while using a grab pack. In an extreme rare act of genuine compassion, the prototype gave up his own chance at freedom to save the child's life. Theodore was later transformed into Catnap, who became frantically loyal to him due to this. By 1995, the prototype had begun secretly uniting the other experiments using his intelligence, charisma, and manipulation. He convinced nearly all of them to follow him by promising the one thing they wanted most: freedom. He carefully coordinated their actions, displaying remarkable skills in cooperation and organization. This planning led directly to the Hour of Joy on August 8th, 1995. Experiment 1166. Yarnaby. Quinn Navidson was an orphan at Playcare, known for strange behavior and average performance at the game station tests. Dr. Harley Sawyer took interest in him, believing Quinn was intentionally holding back his true abilities. After Sawyer confronted him and personally oversaw his next rounds of tests, Quinn suddenly scored extremely high, proving Sawyer's theory correct. Because of these results, in August 1990, Quinn was selected for the Bigger Bodies Initiative and transformed into Yarnaby. After the procedure, Yarnaby was physically stronger, but mentally limited. However, he showed unusual loyalty towards certain staff members, especially Sawyer. Seeing this, Sawyer deliberately isolated Yarnaby and psychologically manipulated him, making Yarnaby emotionally dependent on him, possibly intending to use him as a personal protector. When Sawyer was later removed from Playtime Co., Yarnaby fell into a grief-stricken state, becoming withdrawn, unresponsive, and increasingly unstable. Other scientists eventually labeled him as a flawed experiment. During the Hour of Joy, Yarnaby was reunited with Sawyer and became one of his loyal followers, remaining devoted to him even after the massacre. Experiment 1170. Huggy Wuggy. While the prototype operated from the shadows, another experiment became the public face of Playtime Co.'s twisted ambitions. Huggy Wuggy. Huggy was originally created in 1984 as part of Elliot Ludwig's dream to design a toy that could hug you forever. Modeled after a Sour Patch Kid, the idea was an instant success. Huggy Wuggy quickly became Playtime Co.'s most popular product, spawning merchandise, promotional material, and even a female counterpart, Kissy Missy, in 1985. But by 1990, when the Bigger Bodies Initiative began, Huggy was transformed from a beloved mascot into something far more sinister, reborn as Experiment 1170. While never named, it's believed the child used was between 6 to 12 with dirty blonde hair. Huggy's Bigger Bodies counterpart was engineered to serve as part of the factory's internal security. He spent his days posing motionless as a statue in the lobby, watching visitors and employees alike. Scientists described him as obedient and highly intelligent, reacting aggressively only when provoked. This behavior earned him the label of an optimal outcome among the experiments. However, his obedience had limits. On June 18th, 1992, Huggy escaped the factory through an open delivery bay door. Witnesses reported seeing him sprint nearly half a mile into the surrounding woods before a recovery team was deployed. The situation quickly turned violent. After attacking a vehicle and being shot with tranquilizer darts, Huggy fled deeper into the forest. Over the course of the night, he killed multiple employees sent to retrieve him. Security footage later captured him standing ominously outside a suburban home before he was finally recaptured and returned to Playtime Co. Despite the incident, Huggy remained in service. Kissy Missy. Kissy Missy was created by Playtime Co. in 1985, just 1 year after Huggy Wuggy's explosive success. She was meant to be his perfect counterpart. Softer, sweeter, safer. But like so many things inside this factory, that innocence didn't last. By 1995, Kissy's Bigger Body experiment had been approved for a new role in Playcare. She was scheduled for a relocation, a routine transfer that should have meant nothing. Instead, it became the day everything fell apart. When the Hour of Joy began, Kissy briefly took part in the massacre. In the chaos, she killed the very workers escorting her, and then, just as suddenly, she stopped. In the years that followed, Kissy wandered its halls. She spent time among the safe haven survivors, drifting through fragile alliances and long stretches of isolation, until finally, in 2005, she crossed paths with the player, and unlike most of the factory's creations, she chose to help. Experiment 1222. Mommy Longlegs. Marie Payne, an orphan living in Playcare, was selected in January 1991, the bigger body version of Mommy Longlegs. Although Marie was openly aggressive and hostile toward Playtime Co.'s staff, she showed a protective, motherly attitude toward the other experiments. Because of this, she was assigned as the host of the game station, where she interacted with orphan children and quickly became popular enough that Playtime Co. turned her into a real commercial toy. Despite her friendly image, Mommy Longlegs actively participated in the Hour of Joy massacre. Afterward, she remained inside the game station, ruling it as her personal domain. When the player returns to the factory alongside Poppy, Mommy saw them as intruders and attempted to kill them through a series of deadly minigames, using other experiments as her pawns. As the player continued to survive, Mommy became increasingly unstable and violent, eventually abandoning any remaining facade of kindness. In the final confrontation, her reckless rage caused her to get caught in an industrial grinder, where the player kills her. As she died, she screamed in terror, "He'll make me part of him," revealing her deep fear of Experiment 1006, the prototype, who does later collect her remains. Psychologically, Mommy Longlegs suffered severe attachment issues. She believed she was the only maternal figure the children ever had, yet resented them for leaving her after completing the games. While official documents described her as caring towards children in certain experiments, by the time of Chapter 2, her mind had already degraded. She was willing to kill even her own subordinates if they failed her. After several rejected designs, she was marketed as a stretchy, friendly mother figure and became one of the company's most successful products, later spawning Daddy Longlegs and Baby Longlegs toys as well. 1160. Boxy Boo began as a simple toy created by Playtime Co., but due to poor sales, he was eventually discontinued. Decades later, in 1990, his design was repurposed for the Bigger Bodies Initiative, becoming Experiment 1160, the first truly successful giant experiment. Unlike earlier tests, Boxy was not restricted by the size of his original subject, making him a major breakthrough. Harley Sawyer modified Boxy to have an extreme appetite, specifically for human flesh. His primary role was to eliminate low-level employees who had learned too much about the initiative. His first confirmed victim was Rowan Stoll, proving his effectiveness and securing his position as Playtime Co.'s living disposal system. Boxy Boo is described as highly intelligent, patient, and deceptively cunning. He uses his Jack-in-the-Box form as a lure, hiding in plain sight and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. His playful toy personality was twisted into something sadistic, his music box acting as a taunting warning before he brutally attacks. He is territorial, efficient, and driven almost entirely by hunger and predatory instinct. In 1995, Boxy joined the Prototypes Rebellion and took part in the Hour of Joy, where he helped slaughter and devour countless employees. After the massacre, he continued serving the prototype, later assisting in killing resource extraction specialists who were sent back into the factory to try and restart operations. Throughout the years, Boxy proved extremely dangerous and unpredictable. Even small acts of kindness, such as a guard trying to bring him food, resulted in violent attacks. His enhanced mobility, stretching limbs, and ambush tactics made him one of the most lethal experiments in the entire facility. By the time of later events, Boxy Boo had fully embraced his role as a monstrous hunter, no longer just a failed toy, but a perfected weapon shaped by Playtime Co.'s cruelty and the prototype's influence. Experiment 1188. Catnap. One of the most important events of 1990 involved a 7-year-old orphan named Theodore Graham Bell. Theodore believed he had an imaginary friend, but that friend was actually Experiment 1006, the prototype, secretly communicating with him. Under the prototype's influence, Theodore attempted to escape Playcare using a grab pack. Sadly, however, he electrocuted himself in the process, severely injuring him and leaving him close to death. At that moment, the prototype had a choice. Instead of continuing his own escape, something he had been planning for a long time, it abandoned that chance to save Theodore. The prototype intervened and ensured the boy survived long enough for the scientists to recover him. But, unfortunately, saving Theodore didn't mean rescuing him. Once he was brought back to the labs, Harley Sawyer and the scientists used his condition as an opportunity. Theodore was turned into Catnap, becoming a Bigger Bodies experiment. After the transformation, Catnap developed an almost religious loyalty to the prototype, likely because he remembered that it was the one thing that saved him when no one else truly did. Unlike other experiments, Catnap became a gentle guardian to the children of Playcare, helping them sleep using red gas. Miss Delight. Miss Delight was one of several identical teacher mascots created by Playtime Co. to educate orphans at Playcare School, originally designed as a kind, gentle instructor who taught anatomy and cared deeply for her fellow sister teachers. After the Hour of Joy in 1995, she joined the Experiments Rebellion, but shortly afterward, Catnap locked the teachers inside the school, leaving them trapped, starving, and slowly descending into paranoia. Driven mad by hunger and isolation, Mr. Light crafted a weapon called Barb, and eventually resorted to cannibalizing her own sisters to survive, an act that shattered her sanity and transformed her into a violent, unstable predator. Though fragments of her old self remained, even warning the player to leave for their own safety, her overwhelming hunger and trauma pushed her towards murder, leading her to patrol the school as a loyal ally of the prototype. In 2005, the player kills the teacher by crushing her beneath a metal gate, ending the tragic story of a teacher who began as a caretaker but was broken into a monster by confinement, starvation, and the horrors of Playtime Co. Doughy the Doughman. Doughy the Doughman is one of the most tragic, inhumane experiments created by Playtime Co., presenting himself as a friendly, playful, and dependable leader who became a symbol of hope for the survivors hiding in Safe Haven. Unlike Poppy, who believed the factory should be destroyed no matter the cost, Doughy fought to protect the remaining toys, believing that despite everything they had become, they still carried the humanity they once had. His compassionate nature came primarily from Matthew, a kind and responsible orphan whose personality formed the core of Doughy's leadership, while Kevin's aggressive temperament and Jack's childlike innocence lived within him as conflicting voices. Playtime Co. combined these three children into Experiment 1322. Doughy struggled internally with trauma, responsibility, and identity, often balancing gentleness with a dangerous potential for rage. After the hour of joy, he chose to remain inside the factory to protect the other experiments, eventually leaving Safe Haven and risking everything to keep them alive. When the prototype destroyed the Haven and killed those he considered family, Doughy's guilt and grief overwhelmed him, allowing Kevin's rage to take control and transforming him into a monstrous, unstable form that attacked the player. Forced into deadly confrontation, the player ultimately killed Doughy, and in his final moments, he returned to his softer self, apologizing for losing control. A heartbreaking end for a being who never truly wanted violence, but was doomed by the fractured personalities and trauma Playtime Co. forced into one body. Pianosaurus. Pianosaurus was originally a cheerful musical toy released as part of a band set, known for his upbeat personality, love of singing, and playful humor, but his bigger bodies experiment turned him into something far more tragic. Unlike many experiments, he retained almost no human qualities, behaving more like a confused, rabid animal that reacted violently to movement and consumed anything that fit into his mouth, often without understanding the harm he caused. Despite this, Pianosaurus viewed the world through a distorted, overly positive perspective, believing he was performing joyful concerts and making friends even as he accidentally crushed or killed those around him. Rejected by Harley Sawyer as a failed experiment and left in testing, he survived for years and eventually joined Safe Haven, only to be banished after accidentally killing a mini Hoppy Hopscotch while playing music. Wandering the facility, he continued trying to find bandmates, unknowingly harming others in his attempts to perform, until he encounters the player in Chapter 4, mistaking them for a fellow musician rather than prey. Before he can reach them, Doughy attacks and violently kills him, ending the life of a creature who never truly understood that his joyful performances were causing death and destruction around him. Dog Day. Dog Day was originally the optimistic and dependable leader of the Smiling Critters, a toy meant to embody friendship, encouragement, and hope, but his bigger bodies experiment version became one of the most tragic figures in Playtime Co.'s history. After the Hour of Joy, Dog Day and the other Smiling Critters tried to resist the prototype's control, but their rebellion failed, leaving Dog Day as the last survivor while the others were destroyed or corrupted. Because he refused to worship the prototype, unlike Catnap, who viewed him as a god, Dog Day was imprisoned and mutilated, left hanging in a hidden playhouse cell with the lower half of his body severed. Despite years of suffering, he remained strong-willed and compassionate, showing that his spirit as a protector had not been broken. His final moments were especially tragic when the ruined Smiling Critters swarmed and consumed him from the inside, taking control of his body and turning him into a hostile puppet. Even in death, Dog Day's story reflects the cruel fate of those who resisted the prototype, a hopeful leader reduced to a broken shell, yet still remembered as one of the few experiments who tried to do the right thing until the very end. Experiment 1468. Lily Love Braids. Originally marketed as a fashion doll designed for hair braiding and tea party play, her bigger body form was later created by the prototype under the Bigger Bodies initiative. Lily is hyper-energetic, childlike, and deeply unstable. Due to heavy conditioning and isolation, she believes everyone she meets is a toy and obsessively seeks the prototype's approval. Despite being treated as an outcast, she shows jealousy towards Poppy and has a tendency to snap into violent rage when things don't go her way. Her human identity was Gracie Green, the former lead counselor of the Wellness and Integration sector. During the Hour of Joy, she was captured by the Smiling Critters. In revenge for her role in brainwashing experiments, she was transformed. Prolonged conditioning and isolation fractured her mind, splitting her into the persona of Lily Love Braids and a secondary personality represented by a candy cat head puppet she carries. Chum Chopkins is a quiet, imposing figure caught in the shadow of the prototype's control. Though he serves the prototype, Chum secretly works with Giblet, walking a dangerous line that could cost him everything. Chum rarely speaks, communicating mostly through strained, muffled grunts due to the unnatural placement of his mouth and his torso. The silence only adds to the tragedy of his character. He is clearly uncomfortable, awkward, and socially withdrawn, a creature shaped more by fear than malice. While he struggles to trust strangers, his actions toward those he chooses to help reveal a surprisingly soft and protective nature. Every moment he aids the player feels like a risk he knows he might not survive. Chum's bigger body form was created through the initiative, using either an orphan or an employee. He was repurposed into something disturbingly gentle, a living, quiet corner, meant to calm sensitive children by placing them inside his body. But the reality was far crueler. The children feared him, and whatever humanity remained inside Chum was forced to live with that rejection. 10 days after the Hour of Joy, Chum carried out one of his darkest tasks, capturing Preston Willard under the prototype's orders by swallowing him whole. Giblet presents himself as hopeful, but deeply uncertain, the kind of figure who keeps moving forward, even while doubting every step. Unlike many of the factory survivors, Giblet openly resists the prototype's rule, but still, his defiance comes with hesitation. He questions himself constantly, weighing every decision like someone who knows exactly how costly being wrong can be. He shows clear care for Poppy, even admiration, but when he learns of her desperate plan to destroy the factory's foundations, his confidence visibly shakes. To him, her years trapped in the case may have pushed her too far. It's one of the few moments where his hope collides head-on with fear. Giblet also carries grief. When speaking with Chum Chopkins about Doughy the Doughman, he admits he always suspected Doughy's violent side would eventually win. But that doesn't soften the loss. When Doughy dies, Giblet mourns him anyway. It's a small moment that says a lot. He expects the worst, and still cares when it happens. He was originally created by Playtime Co. as a protector-type toy for children. Giblet's bigger bodied version had a history with Poppy long before the factory fell. After the Hour of Joy, he was put in an impossible position, ordered by the prototype to execute surviving humans, despite clearly believing they weren't a threat. He obeyed, but something in him broke that day. From that point on, the doubt turned into quiet rebellion. Giblet began organizing resistance alongside Doughy and Poppy, trying to carve out any chance of fighting back. But fractures formed. Where Doughy chased safer ground, Giblet chose the recycling center, and the group split. Not long after, the prototype caught him, and whatever punishment followed left him literally turned inside out. A brutal reminder of what defines costs in this factory. He later formed a risky alliance with Chum Chopkins, placed him as a mole inside the prototype's forces. Giblet isn't fearless, he is uncertain, and he definitely is untouched by the factory's cruelty, but he's still one of the few who's trying to fight it. Anyway, Playtime Co.'s history is filled with countless mascots beyond the well-known experiments, ranging from nightmare critters like Baba Chops, Icky Licky, Raby Baby, Alistair Gator, Simon Smoke, Poe. While many concepts were rejected, scrapped, or abandoned entirely, like Kick Me Paul, Sir Poops a Lot, Owen the Oven, and numerous unfinished ideas that never reached production, hinting at how vast and experimental the company's ambitions truly were. Though not all of these characters have clear stories or confirmed histories, they all share a common thread. Each mascot represents another part of Playtime Co.'s endless cycle of creation, failure, and exploitation, many ultimately becoming victims of the company's obsession with innovation and its willingness to sacrifice anything. Throughout the early 1990s, experiments became more advanced but increasingly unstable. Several employees began noticing strange activity in the factory. Some, like IT worker Rowan Stoll, discovering the truth and then being killed before he could expose it. Anyone who refused to cooperate was violently silenced. In 1993, a mysterious event, known as the theater incident, resulted in over 66 visitor deaths. Evidence later pointed to Dr. Harley Sawyer as responsible.
How many is up now?
58. So far.
Another one over here.
59.
Where's that investigator? Campbell, Lockford? Whatever his name is.
Poking around somewhere? Don't know. You ask me? The culprit's obvious. Just needs to be spelled out plain and clear for the bigwigs.
You think?
Yeah. Rotten eggs come from rotten chickens, you know? Can't get more rotten a chicken than him.
You know why we're all here. Let's skip the formalities. Eddie, the cleanup. What's the progress?
We'll be in the clear by the week's end. And it goes without saying, but word of this doesn't breathe beyond the factory's wall.
Sound like a plan?
Lath, Think rationally here. We need to...
If you like having your job, Sharon, beat it. We're busy.
It's me.
Oh, step on in, Mr. Lockhart. My constituents and I were just discussing some sensitive business.
Afraid I'm here to complicate that there.
Well, don't leave us in suspense. What half-wit, soon-to-be dead man made this mistake?
Dr. Harley Sawyer.
Meanwhile, more orphans continued to disappear as the Bigger Bodies Initiative expanded. By 1995, Playtime Co. was a ticking time bomb. Journal entries from an orphan named Riley reveal that children were frequently being chosen and never seen again. Most believed they were being adopted, when in reality they were being turned into experiments. Then came the defining moment of the entire timeline. On an unknown day in 1995, Experiment 1006 initiated a full-scale revolt. Every living toy in the factory turned hostile at the same time. They hunted down and brutally murdered almost every employee inside Playtime Co. This massacre became known as the Hour of Joy. At exactly 11 a.m., when security would be the weakest, the prototype triggered a perfectly synchronized rebellion. Every major experiment turned on humans at once, slaughtering employees and visitors throughout the factory. The massacre was not random. It was a meticulously planned uprising designed by Experiment 1006 from start to finish. After the event, the prototype convinced the surviving toys that they could never leave the factory, claiming the outside world would only experiment on them again. The bodies of the dead were dragged into the depths of the facility and used as food to keep the experiments alive. He also imprisoned Poppy again, believing she needed to be controlled until she accepted his vision. Following the Hour of Joy, the prototype became the unseen ruler of Playtime Co.'s remains. He continued manipulating events from the shadows, later posing as a child named Ollie to deceive both Poppy and the player. The prototype is also known to collect the bodies and parts of dead experiments, grafting them onto himself for unknown purposes. He leaves trails of black tar whenever he moves, and is capable of mimicking multiple voices at once, suggesting either an advanced ability of his own or the results of absorbing other toys. According to the restricted Salvation tape, he has even begun creating hybrid experiments by combining pieces of different toys into new forms. Despite his cruelty, there are rare moments where he shows warped forms of gratitude. In fairness, Catnap's loyalty was rewarded with control over Playcare, and Preston Willard, one of the few scientists who treated him well, was spared death. Only 2 people are confirmed to have survived throughout all of this: Laith Pierre and the unnamed protagonist we play as. Afterward, the massacred toys dragged the bodies into the depths of the factory for food, but over time resources ran out, forcing them to cannibalize smaller experiments to survive. With no more employees to transform and no more food coming in, the Bigger Bodies Initiative effectively collapsed. During this, a young girl named Riley witnessed the horrors of the Hour of Joy through a hole in her cell. Eventually discovering the toy graveyard, she realized she wasn't the only one trapped. Many others had been turned into toys. Riley arrived at Playcare after losing her parents in a fire, clutching hope and a journal to record her thoughts. Even as a shy 12-year-old girl, she remembered a life full of love, something the younger orphans had never known. Her early journal entries show her trying to hold onto her morals, her memories, and a sense of hope in a place that promised only uncertainty. Months later, she was chosen, not for adoption, but for horrifying experiments. Her body was mutilated, her organs removed, and she was trapped in a cell. Yet even as a transformed, broken version of herself, she refused to eat the dead to survive. She starved, hiding the prison train key in a final act to stop others from being taken. Riley eats the train key, as it's the one sure method no one will ever find. The same key the player retrieves in Chapter 4. Riley dies shortly after the Hour of Joy, either at the hands of another experiment or from starvation, her mutilated body being found later, but she died knowing she had done something meaningful, saving a life even in death. Riley's story may be small in the grand scheme of Playtime Co., but it's a brutal testament to courage, morality, and the fragile power of hope in the face of unspeakable horror. Riley was a child, torn from her life, mutilated, and forced into a nightmare she could never escape. She was murdered, abused, and discarded by Playtime Co., just one of thousands who suffered the same fate. Her hope, her kindness, her final act of defiance stand as a stark reminder of the innocence stolen, the lives shattered, and the monsters born from human hands. During the hour of joy, Jessica Newman and Preston Willard managed to escape the initial massacre. After the hour of joy, Jessica and Preston barricaded themselves inside the labs, clinging to the hope that rescue would come. For 10 long, torturous days, they waited, listening to screams and cries, holding their breath every time a toy dragged itself through the hallway, only to realize the outside world had abandoned them. Jessica admitted that her entire life belonged to Playtime Co., that she had nothing beyond its walls, and then Preston confessed his unintended role in helping spark the massacre. Her calm turned to anger. They bickered back and forth, their shouting drawing Huggy Wuggy straight to them and forcing them to flee.
Well, maybe this is what we get. All we've done for...
You don't have anything to apologize for. We were doing good work. It's not your fault this all blew up in our faces.
But...
Preston, you don't need to.
I just couldn't stand by and watch it happen anymore.
What are you saying?
I have no other choice.
You let them... You let them... And you didn't think they would do something like this? Tell me this is some kind of joke. My God, how could you do that?
Not just me. There were others. And we all knew this wasn't right. I think you know that too.
No, don't try to rationalize it just because you got cold feet, because you couldn't stomach the work.
Oh, the work. The work was wrong.
It's not that simple. You were still a part of it as much as the rest of us. We were supposed...
They split up, and Preston was almost immediately captured by an experiment and then taken by the prototype, who, rather than killing him, transformed him into a horrific amalgamation of multiple toys. He fused parts of Boogiebot, Bunzo Bunny, and Catbee, and forcibly transferred the brain and eyes of scientist Preston Willard into it. Disturbingly, the prototype views this horrific transformation as a twisted honor, reserved only for those who were kind to him. Alone and desperate, Jessica wandered the blood-soaked corridors, searching for Preston, only to encounter the prototype. For the first time, her logic failed her completely. Slipping in a pool of blood, she begged for her life, frantically trying to shift blame onto Leith Pierre, saying it wasn't her fault. But the prototype, cold and unamused, reminded her that unlike Preston, she had never been kind to him. In her final moments, the woman who once believed herself detached from fear was reduced to pure panic. Her composure shattered as the creature she helped create drove its claws into her, ending the life of someone who had spent years stealing theirs, convincing herself that horror was simply part of the job.
Isn't that right? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please.
That's funny. You're the
Second person.
I'm fit today.
said the other was my
Good friend, Preston.
Preston was
Always.
nice to me. You were never very nice.
Where are you?
Dr. Newman.
Playtime Co. didn't become a nightmare on its own. It was built by people, each with their own role, their own secrets, and their own downfall. Bruno White. Bruno White remains one of the more unsettling figures within Playtime Co. history, and not because of overt cruelty or dramatic outbursts, but because of how calmly, obedient, and emotionally detached he appeared to be. Once a promising member of the Young Geniuses program alongside Harley Sawyer, Bruno built a reputation for intelligence and scientific achievement before quietly settling into his role as the company scientist, where he followed orders with little hesitation or moral resistance. He seemed easily bent by authority, transforming even his own superior Sawyer into an experiment when ordered to do so by Leith Pierre, carrying out the procedure without protest as if loyalty to hierarchy mattered more than personal conviction. His voice recording suggests a chilling indifference toward the orphans selected for experimentation, speaking to them with flat, routine calm, as though preparing children for mutilation was just another task on a checklist. Despite his cold professionalism, Bruno possessed a sharp, mocking streak, openly ridiculing Sawyer's warnings about a coming catastrophe by naming his own system password One Bad Day, turning genuine fear into a private joke among colleagues. Over time, his work grew darker, selecting children from playcare for experimentation, overseeing procedures that stripped away identity and humanity, and likely authoring dismissive warnings that treated looming disaster as paranoia. After the theater incident, Bruno performed perhaps his most infamous procedure, the transformation of Harley Sawyer into Experiment 1354, calmly explaining the disorientation as expected while Sawyer woke in fury and confusion, realizing he had become exactly what he once created. Promoted afterward to head of the secondary lab, Bruno was tasked with salvaging failed experiments, extracting knowledge from broken creations, and turning tragedy into data. His role in selecting children continued, with evidence linking him to the horrifying operation that mutilated Riley, who awoke briefly during surgery to see a doctor removing her organs. Yet despite his calculated obedience and survival instincts, he met the same fate as many others on August 8, 1995, dying during the hour of joy, alongside the scientist he served with. Some even joined the experiments, believing it would save them. Thomas Clark, later known as Experiment 1199, was a longtime pediatrician at Playtime Co., hired in 1955 to take care of the children inside the factory. After being diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, Clark volunteered for the company's experimental program in the early 1990s, hoping to survive by transferring his consciousness into a Brawn toy. Before his transformation, Clark witnessed the unsettling events surrounding the prototype attempting to save a child, Theodore Grambell, after a failed escape attempt. What he didn't yet understand was how deeply Playtime Co.'s Bigger Bodies initiative had already taken root. As Experiment 1199, Clark awoke, confused and disoriented. Unaware that he was no longer human, placed among other living toys, he was viciously attacked, suffering catastrophic injuries that left him barely functional. Though surgeons temporarily stabilized him, he was isolated from the others for his own protection, as they knew he was an ex-employee. After the hour of joy, that protection failed. The toys eventually found him and finished what had already begun, leaving his broken remains abandoned in the labs. Rowan Stoll, the head of information technology at Playtime Co., was a man who understood systems, how they worked, how they failed, and how secrets could hide inside them, and for a long time he believed he was helping protect the company. Brilliant with computers, and trusted enough to shut down the factory's servers whenever necessary, Rowan initially treated strange incidents as technical problems to be solved, even investigating reports like the Huggy Wuggy statue seemingly watching children, something his coworkers laughed off while he nervously tried to convince Laith Pierre to listen. His recordings revealed a nervous, stuttering tone, whether from natural anxiety or fear of authority. But as he dug deeper into Playtime Co.'s systems, that anxiety turned into something far darker. Hidden files and restricted data exposed the truth, human experimentation, missing employees, and the Bigger Bodies initiative. In that moment, Rowan lost all faith in the company he once defended. The man who cared about protecting Playtime's reputation became determined to destroy it, gathering evidence and planning to expose everything to the outside world. But the deeper he dug, the more the company pushed back. His pension was stripped away, disciplinary actions piled up, and even his car was sabotaged. A near-fatal incident that made it clear someone wanted him dead. Paranoid and terrified, Rowan began recording final messages, scheduling a server shutdown so he could leak evidence and run, even leaving a desperate letter for his mother with instructions to deliver proof to the police if he vanished. What Rowan didn't know was that Harley Sawyer had already decided his fate, choosing the newly created Boxy Boo as a disposal method for employees who learned too much. Somewhere inside the factory, Rowan encountered the idle Jack-in-the-Box, likely believing it was harmless, until it snapped open and Boxy Boo lunged forward, swallowing him alive in a single, brutal moment. Rowan became the creature's first victim, his death recorded to the security system, and afterward the company erased him so thoroughly that memos were released under his own name, as if he were still alive. A final cruel twist, ensuring the man who tried to reveal the truth disappeared without a trace, just another ghost inside Playtime Co.'s machines. And then there were the ones who kept the machine running, quiet men who made sure no one asked questions. Eddie Ritterman. Eddie M.N. Ritterman was one of the most mysterious and quietly dangerous figures within Playtime Co., a man rarely seen by employees, yet whose influence shaped the darkest corners of the company's operations. Known as a recluse and described as the backbone of the business, he carried himself with calm professionalism and a refined, almost comforting demeanor, speaking with a polished British accent and presenting himself as a rational businessman rather than a scientist. Behind that exposed exterior, however, hid a cold and calculating mind, devoted not to innovation but to control, ensuring the company's secrets stayed buried and its most unethical actions never saw the light of day. While officially titled Head of Research, much of his true work revolved around negotiations, contracts, and quiet manipulations, orchestrating deals that enabled Playtime Co.'s expansion into darker territory. Ritterman operated like a shadow executive, cleaning up disasters and erasing evidence, personally organizing cover-ups, such as the aftermath of the theater incident, so no trace of the company's crimes could become public. His cruelty surfaced most clearly in his dealings with Warrenbach Constructions, Darwin, Silva, where beneath his calm tone, he revealed a ruthless edge, mocking Darwin's signature, cornering him near a cliff, and reminding him that contracts were chains that could not be broken. Even among Playtime's higher-ups, Ritterman was feared. He openly criticized Harley Sawyer's recklessness and even suggested removing him permanently, valuing efficiency and secrecy above loyalty or human life. When Sawyer was eventually transformed into a machine-like experiment, Ritterman showed no hesitation, promoting Bruno White and ordering him to extract whatever knowledge remained from Sawyer's altered form, treating even former leaders as resources to be mined. In the end, Ritterman embodied a different kind of horror within Playtime Co., the quiet, corporate cruelty of a man who never raised his voice, never lost control, and ensured that every atrocity was neatly hidden behind paperwork, contracts, and silence. Ritterman buried every secret he could find until the factory buried him too. Some believed they were in control, guarding the monsters behind locked doors. The Warden. The Warden remains one of the quieter and more mysterious figures from Playtime Co., a man defined less by authority and more by isolation. He appears deeply introverted and reserved, speaking cautiously and keeping emotional distance even when confronted with chaos. As the overseer of the prison sector, hidden within the factory, he worked from his own office and likely spent years managing containment systems, security measures, and the impossible task of controlling living experiments. When the hour of joy erupted, that control shattered instantly. The Warden barricaded himself inside a locked room, contacting the doctor in a state of disbelief as he tried to process how the toys had bypassed security so completely. He reasoned that such a breach would require executive-level access, narrowing the possibilities to only a handful of people: Leith Pierre, Stella, Eddie Ritterman, and himself, suggesting betrayal had come from somewhere inside the system he trusted. Though urged to use his clearance to escape, the Warden admitted that access codes meant nothing against the monsters loose in the halls, describing the slaughter unfolding outside his door with growing fear. Desperate, he accepted the doctor's offer for help, surrendering his Omni-Hand in exchange for a promised safe escape route. Unaware he was being manipulated, his final fate is never shown directly, but evidence strongly suggests he never made it out, either betrayed and killed by the doctor, who had little reason to keep him alive, or hunted down by Yarnaby. In the end, the Warden's story is one of quiet irony.
Give it to me. I can get you anywhere. I'll have control over everything. I can shut some doors, open others. I can make you a pathway that leads right to the exit. I don't know. If you want to wait to get torn to pieces, that's your prerogative. But look at your immediate options, Warden. What choice other than this gets you out of here alive? I'm giving you the tool. Just get me out of here. Please. Of course. You've made a smart decision, Warden. I promise I'll get you out of here safe and sound.
And finally, the man who believed he could control it all, Dr. Harley Sawyer, later known as the Doctor, was one of the most ruthless and intelligent figures in Playtime Co.'s history, a brilliant but deeply unmoral scientist who originated the Bigger Bodies Initiative as a way to replace human workers with living toy organisms, while secretly pursuing his own obsession with uncovering the mystery behind the prototype. Once a gifted child in the Young Geniuses program and a former pupil of Elliot Ludwig, Sawyer's arrogance, lack of empathy, and obsessive perfectionism eventually turned him into a feared and widely disliked figure among both colleagues and executives. Behind a calm, polite facade hid a volatile, narcissistic man who viewed children, employees, and experiments as tools for his golden path, personally overseeing horrific procedures that transformed orphans into living mascots. His ambition eventually led to betrayal. The theater incident remains one of Playtime Co.'s most catastrophic and secretive disasters. Though details are scarce, the theater area was set ablaze, releasing several bigger bodies experiments and leading to the deaths of at least 66 visitors. In the aftermath, multiple specialists sent to handle the situation were also killed and consumed by experiments. The company swiftly erased evidence and covered up the tragedy, but the scale of the disaster became the breaking point for Playtime executives. Investigator Lockhart was brought in to uncover the cause, ultimately confirming that Harley Sawyer's negligence was responsible. In response, the higher-ups decided to punish Sawyer by turning him into experiment 1354, removing his brain and organs and distributing them through the lower levels so he could never escape, forcing him to serve the company as a living source of knowledge under constant threat of death. Following the incident, Playtime Co. also began construction of The Shelf, a prison-like complex designed to contain both dangerous experiments and Sawyer himself. During the Hour of Joy, Sawyer used the chaos to seize power, forming a tense alliance with the prototype, manipulating and procuring the Omni-Hand from the Warden, and then controlling sections of the factory and continuing his twisted experiments. By 2005, he ruled the shadows as the main threat of Chapter 4, sadistically toying with the player through traps, psychological games, and robotic bodies until he ultimately destroyed his system and ended his reign. Even in death, Sawyer remains bitter and unrepentant, claiming with his final breath that the player had saved no one. There are dozens of other Playtime Co. employees' names scattered across reports, recordings, and forgotten documents. People like Avery, Jaren, Sharon, Patty Hall, Marcus Brickley, Johnny, Maggie, Bill, members of the Boxy production line, specialists, the 1170 retrieval team, McCath, Mark Smith, Ludwig's collies, and many others whose stories were never fully told. Most played only minor roles within the company's vast machinery, ordinary workers, technicians, and staff who kept the factory running without ever understanding the full horror unfolding beneath them. When the Hour of Joy began, their lives ended the same way countless others did, hunted down by the experiments they unknowingly helped create. Their deaths were swift, chaotic, and largely undocumented, their identities reduced to names in forgotten logs or brief mentions in security files. Only a few were spared that fate, and not by luck, but by timing. Employees who had recently retired, or who happened to be away from the factory when the massacre began, escaping a nightmare they would never truly understand. By late 2004, the remaining survivors, aka the toys inside the Playtime Co., who refused to follow the prototype, are struggling with severe food shortage. Dr. Sawyer has rigged the construction tunnels with freezing traps to block Doughy the Dough-Man's movement. Losing Doughy would be disastrous since he's essential to their survival and protection. The survivors debate possible escape routes, analyzing different subblocks, and concluding that most options would almost certainly get them killed. They ultimately consider heading to the barracks, which contains a dangerous security system that might still be active. Their logic is grim. It's better to attempt an escape that might kill them than to choose a path guaranteed to end in death. Another report confirms that the prototype continues to bypass their defenses despite constant changes to the traps. He has been seen lingering outside their security door, tapping on the walls and watching them. The survivors realize their situation is hopeless. They are completely surrounded with no safe place left to run or hide. And for 10 years, nothing was heard from Playtime Co. Chapter 1. An ex-employee of Playtime Co. receives a mysterious letter claiming that the workers who vanished 10 years ago are still alive inside the abandoned factory. Against all common sense, they return to investigate, becoming the protagonist of Poppy Playtime, Chapter 1. Upon entering the facility, the player finds it eerie and seemingly alive. Old VHS tapes provide background. Leif Pierre, head of innovation, warns intruders to leave. Another tape explains the grab pack device used to navigate the factory. The player is introduced to Huggy Wuggy, the company's most popular toy. As the player explores, Huggy disappears from his display, hinting that he is more than just a statue. More tapes reveal strange issues at the factory, including missing toy boxes meant for orphans and odd behavior from employees. The player navigates puzzles and reaches the Make-A-Friend machine, an automated system invented in 1960 that produces every Playtime Co. toy. After creating a toy to unlock a door, the player continues deeper into the facility, discovering disturbing messages written on walls and evidence that Huggy Wuggy is alive and possibly bleeding. A crucial VHS log mentions the prototype, suggesting it is responsible for the disappearances and that its escape was a catastrophic failure of security. Following cryptic directions from the original letter, the player reaches a room containing the Poppy doll itself. Opening her case awakens her, ending Chapter 1 on a cliffhanger.
You opened my case.
Chapter 2. After freeing Poppy at the end of Chapter 1, the player wakes to find her missing. A new toy is introduced, Mommy Longlegs, A stretchy pink spider-like mascot from 1991, she becomes the main antagonist of Chapter 2. Poppy promises to help the player escape using a train system, but Mommy Longlegs kidnaps her and forces the player into a deadly set of games inside the old Playtime Co. game station. To earn the train codes needed to leave, the player must survive 3 challenges: musical memory, a pattern-matching game with a toy Bunzo Bunny, Whack-a-Wuggy, survival against mini Huggy Wuggy toys, statues, a terrifying chase game with PJ Pug-a-Pillar. After completing the challenges, Mommy Longlegs tries to kill the player anyway. A chase ensues, ending with her being crushed in machinery. Her remains are dragged away by the prototype, the mysterious, highly intelligent creature, pulling the strings behind the scenes. The player boards the escape train with Poppy, but she suddenly admits she can't let them leave yet. Poppy reroutes the train, causing it to crash, leading directly into Chapter 3. Chapter 3. The player wakes after the train crash and is dragged deeper into a new area called Playcare, an underground orphanage run by Playtime Co. An animated cartoon introduces the smiling critters, including a purple toy called Catnap, the same toy that was recalled after children began suffering horrific nightmares. The player is guided by a mysterious child over the phone named Ollie, who helps restore power to Playcare. Along the way, the player learns that teachers and staff slowly went insane after being trapped inside during the Hour of Joy, and that the prototype is worshipped by Catnap like a god and controls the remaining experiments. The player encounters Dog Day, the last surviving smiling critter, who warns that Catnap and the prototype have turned the entire place into a hunting ground. After navigating multiple nightmare-filled areas, the player finally confronts Catnap. Using the upgrade grab pack and electrical system, they overpower him. After the player defeats Catnap, the prototype arrives and kills him, despite having once saved his life. This confirms that the prototype no longer protects its followers. It eliminates them when they are no longer useful. Chapter 4. After the horrors of the theater incident and the Hour of Joy, Playtime Co.'s underground facility became a war zone. The experiments, once innocent children, turned into monstrous toys who were left to fend for themselves, while the prototype slowly tightened his grip on everything. Following the chaos he helped create, Dr. Harley Sawyer mysteriously vanished. Documents later revealed the truth. Leith Pierre ordered Sawyer's punishment for his failures. Instead of being killed, Sawyer was transformed into one of the experiments he once created. His mind preserved, but his body was replaced, leaving him trapped as a living machine, forced to serve Playtime Co. against his will. Now working under the prototype's control, Sawyer continues experimenting, setting traps, and hunting down the remaining survivors. His laboratory shows the grim reality of Playtime's new purpose. Failed experiments are not healed. They are dismantled for parts, likely to strengthen the prototype itself. Deep beneath the factory lies Safe Haven, a hidden community of surviving experiments. Their protector is Doughy the Doughman, a gentle but powerful creature who shields the smaller toys from danger. The area is filled with Sawyer's traps. The escape routes are blocked or deadly, and food is scarce. Survival goes harder every day. Through tapes and reports, it's revealed that Doughy is not just one child. He's made of 3. Jack, who's 1322A, kind but fragile. Kevin, 1322B, aggressive and unstable. Matthew, 1322C, compassionate and natural leader. These 3 personalities were fused into a single experiment. Doughy's kindness and protective nature comes mainly from Matthew, while Kevin provides strength and rage. A heartbreaking tape shows Jack's parents visiting him after his transformation. Horrified by what Playtime turned their son into, they try to reach him, but Doughy, confused and terrified, loses control and kills them both.
Sir, ma'am, I ask that you remain calm whenever you interact with the patient. He's only been awake a few days now. In many respects, he's still adjusting.
Is that him? Is that my boy?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Oh, George! That's our boy! Jackie!
Why does he look like that? What did you do to him?
Stop it, George. Just stop. That's our son in there. Our son.
Dear, look at it. That's not even human.
Let's just talk to him. You'll see. Let's just go in there and talk to him. Can we? Can we talk to him?
Yes, ma'am, you certainly can. Go on in, whenever you're ready.
But we have you back now. That's what's important. We can...
Who are you?
Jack? Honey, it's me. It's Mommy.
Mommy?
Yes. Yes, it's It's Mommy and Daddy. You remember, don't you?
Leave me alone.
Hey, you'll be okay, I promise. Mommy's only here to talk.
No, I don't want to talk. Get out!
Susan, I think we should leave.
Jackie, I'm staying right here. I'm not leaving you. Not ever again. Do you hear me?
The gentle voices lie. I know what they do. They lie, and they poke, and they hurt. Susan, get away from me!
Jack? Mommy won't lie to you, Jackie. Mommy won't hurt you. I never hurt you.
Hey, open this door! Oh, God. Susan! Please, open the door! Please!
This trauma remains buried inside him, shaping the fragile mind he becomes. When Poppy reappears, she proposes a desperate solution: destroy the entire Playtime facility once and for all. Her plan is simple but extreme: flood the foundation with red smoke, ignite it using mining explosives, bring the whole complex crashing down, kill the prototype, and end everything. Dewey resists. To him, the creatures in Safe Haven are not monsters, they are people. He refuses to sacrifice them just to win, but Poppy insists it's the only way. To carry out Poppy's plan, the player must retrieve the Omni Hand, a master control device capable of overriding Playtime systems. While searching for it, the player confronts Dr. Sawyer, now reduced to nothing but a brain controlling robotic bodies. A conversation between Sawyer and the prototype reveals their tense alliance. The prototype keeps Sawyer alive only because he is still useful. After sabotaging Sawyer's system, the player finally secures the Omni Hand and returns to the Safe Haven. With the Omni Hand in place, the plan begins, but one major threat remains: the prototype. Poppy asks Dewey to go outside and hold it off while the player restarts the generator, powering Safe Haven's defenses. Dewey agrees, leaving to confront the prototype alone. The generator is repaired, everything seems safe until it isn't. When the player and Poppy return, they find Safe Haven completely destroyed. Every single little critter is dead. The prototype slaughtered them all, while the defenses were briefly offline. Dewey returns to find his family gone, and he breaks. Overcome with guilt and rage, Dewey's personalities begin to clash. Kevin blames the player, Matthew tries to reason, and Jack collapses into despair. Consumed by grief, Dewey transforms into a monstrous form and attacks. Remembering his weakness to cold, the player lures him into freezing gas, crushing him beneath falling debris. With his final breaths, Dewey reverts to Jack, crying, apologizing, and dying heartbroken. More tapes reveal shocking revelations. Poppy knew the hour of joy was coming. She believed the toys would escape, not massacring everyone. The prototype convinced her they could never leave, and Poppy deeply regrets what happened. Most shocking of all, Poppy refers to Elliot Ludwig as her father, confirming she is far more important to Playtime's history than anyone realized. As the player prepares to ignite the foundations, Poppy tries contacting Ollie, the mysterious child who guided them from the start, but when he answers, his voice changes. Ollie was never a child. Ollie was the prototype the entire time. The prototype reveals he manipulated everything. He used the player, tricked Poppy, and lured them deeper into the facility. He tells Poppy it's time to come home, making it clear their connection goes far deeper than anyone understood. Realizing she's been outplayed, Poppy panics and flees, leaving the player and Kissy Missy behind. The prototype detonates the explosives. Kissy Missy tries to save the player, but her arm is torn off, and the player plunges into the deepest level of the facility. A final security tape from Leif Pierre warns that this area is top secret, and trespassers are executed on sight. As the player looks out into the darkness, they see what appears to be Kissy Missy limping towards them, but it isn't her. After all this time, Huggy Wuggy has returned.
If I were you, I'd start running.
Chapter 5. After falling into the factory's deepest levels, the player discovers the nightmare is far from over. In the darkness, the player meets Giblet, a nervous but hopeful survivor who is tortured and mutilated by the prototype. Giblet believes the player might be the factory's last chance. Alongside him is Chum Chopkins, a massive, wary experiment working as a reluctant insider. Their path leads deeper into the underground prison, where the player encounters Lily Lovebraids, aka the now transformed Gracie Green, unstable and dangerously unpredictable. She holds the group and the player hostage for the prototype, who is anything but grateful. Before the prototype attacks Poppy and then gets scared off by Kissy Missy, where Lily then chases the player before falling to her death. An angry Huggy Wuggy finds the player, chasing them again until running straight into Kissy Missy. His expression changes from hatred to pure admiration. But before they can hug properly, the prototype stabs them both, their fates unknown, before chasing the player across a train, eventually catching them and throwing them in a vat of toxic waste to drown. Left for dead, the player is revived by Giblet using his electric bat. With no time left, he directs the player towards a final hope, a server room containing critical backup data on the prototype. Because now the truth is clear, the Playtime Butcher really is this company's last hope.
Well now, this is a rather interesting turn of events.
So, what is the prototype really? Originally, he was a child named Oliver. He was used as a test run so Elliot Ludwig could perfect the process that would later revive Poppy. He was the true first human experiment. Perhaps it really was Oliver's body that was found near Ludwig when he died, and Sawyer had nothing to do with it, as people suspected. Oliver, however, realizing he had been lied to and sacrificed for someone else's sake, became angry. His resentment began to harden into the cold, calculating entity known as the prototype. Over time, he seized control of the factory, commanding the other experiments, and imprisoning Poppy after she opposed his plan to destroy the facility. However cruel he has become, his connection to Poppy was never completely severed. In his own warped way, he still clings to her as something closer to family, just as Elliot Ludwig once promised they would be. That promise twisted over time. Reshaped by pain and obsession, he is convinced she belongs beside him, convinced that what he is doing is somehow protection, but it's really control, dressed up as care, and to him, that difference no longer matters. This leaves one last question hanging in the dark. Who are we? As the player, our past is a void the story refuses to fully illuminate. There isn't enough concrete evidence to confirm our true role. All we can say for certain is that we were once a Playtime co-employee, and somehow we survived the hour of joy when so many others didn't. But the toys recognize us, they react to us. Mommy Longlegs makes it clear we used to work there, and that alone is unsettling, because recognition implies history, and history implies responsibility. Maybe they're just trying to finish what we started. Maybe we really were just another worker, blind, ignorant, caught in something we never understood. Or maybe the truth is far worse. Maybe we weren't innocent at all. Maybe we helped build the suffering that screams through those halls, and now after all these years, the factory is finally remembering our name. Poppy Playtime promised a sanctuary for children, a bright and playful world where they could feel safe, but the truth was far more sinister. It was a nightmare, dressed as a playground, a place of neglect, of torture, where cries for help went unanswered and no one came to save them. Children were prey, screaming, as the very adults who should have protected them looked on like they were nothing more than livestock. And now, one thing is painfully clear. The children were never the monsters. The toys were never the monsters. The true monsters were the people entrusted with their care, the staff who failed them again and again. And somewhere in the shadows of this story, no matter how we see ourselves, no matter how much we try to deny it, we were a monster too.